Hello, everyone. We're here now with another GamePad Online interview. So we've been talking to professionals from the games industry to find out more about their journey and offer some advice for people who are aspiring to careers in the games industry. So right now, I'm going to be speaking with the founder and CEO of LDN United, the first esports social enterprise, Oliver Weingarten. Oliver, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me on. Fantastic event so far.
Cool. All right. So just a reminder for people that you can give your feedback in the stream chat as we're doing this interview. You can also give your thoughts in our Discord, which is active right now. We're also online on social media, at mayamada on Twitter and at mayamadatees on Instagram. So let's talk esports. So as I was going through like your website and sort of your details, I couldn't help notice that you spent a number of years as a solicitor in the Premier League, sort of specialising in commercial and property matters. You also worked at the Formula One Teams Association, and then formed your own sports advisory company, worked in sports tech, and then co-founded your own esports social enterprise. So I was going through like all those stops on your journey, and definitely want to sort of like get into that and figure out how you made each move and sort of what was going through your mind, because it's quite a journey. The first thing I'd say, just coming from the world of the Premier League, is are you disappointed that Lionel Messi won't be playing in this season in England?
Personally I am, because I would love to see him play in this country. I think he's a fabulous talent, and it looks like it'll probably happen next year anyway. I mean, I'm privileged to have seen Messi play a few times in person for Barcelona, and he's a genius. And I think it would really enhance the league, but I'm not sure it'd do a huge much amount really for the value of the rights. They've sold in cycles, but I think just from a profile piece, there would be a nice bounce.
Okay. All right, and to anyone who's not into sports, that's going to be the last sports question. I just wanted to ask that for my own personal interest. So, as I said, you've taken a lot of like stops on your journey, and I'm interested to know, when did esports specifically come into your mind as an interest? Is that something that was always part of your plan, or it just came along at one point?
And I can tell you, in 2004, when I took my first steps up into the Premier League to be the General Counsel on Commercial and Intellectual Property, I'd never envisaged running an esports org 16 years later, that's for sure. I think esports started to come to the fore when I worked around Formula E, which is another form of motorsports, the electric form of motorsport, and they're seen as being very innovative. And actually they did a number of esports competitions. I worked with Formula E in its inaugural season. I helped set up a teams association, because I'd run a teams association Formula One for 3 years before that. And then I worked in sports tech, and we used Formula E as a guinea pig in VR and mobile gaming, and being able to put the consumer in the headset so that they could be in the car seat during the race. And esports sort of flowed from that. And Formula E did a Road to Vegas competition for $1 million prize, and that sort of opened up my eyes to esports. But I always thought that motorsports, esports, wasn't really a true esport. And it wasn't until 2018, when I went to Wembley Arena one Friday afternoon for the Face It CSGO finals, that I really realised what true esports was. The Wembley Arena sold out on a Friday afternoon. Everyone in cosplay, merchandise, being sold quicker than beers in the concourse. Very different to traditional sport, obviously. And I saw this short form, snackable, bite-sized content, unbelievable production. And I realized that actually traditional sports are missing a trick in what they're replicating in esports. Maybe we'll come to that later. But I in my head had reconciled that I needed to get into esports, and I was starting to do some due diligence. And that was the sort of the nail in the proverbial coffin that said, right, that's it, shut, let's go, let's move on. That's the right thing to do. Esports is the future. You just need to look at when Arena being sold out on a Friday afternoon. And then it was a case of, what do I do in this ecosystem? How do I get involved in it?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's quite an eye-opening kind of experience when you see the whole production around it. So, like, I've not seen anything as big as sort of a esports event at Wembley, but I did go to an event that was a FIFA esports tournament, and I went to it's in a cinema, so they'd sort of taken over a screen and given a proper production, and it was like watching Match of the Day. They even had Jolien Lescott, who was on the commentary team. I was like,
was it at Gfinity in Fulham Broadway?
Yes, yeah, Gfinity, yeah. So I was like, wow, this is this is like a real thing.
Yeah, but I mean, you could argue that FIFA, it might be controversial, you could argue that FIFA isn't really a true esport either. But League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Fortnite, Dota, you could go on and on.
Yeah.
Probably have got generally higher viewership than FIFA.
Okay,
FIFA's got a strong community.
We're definitely going to get into like the differences within the esports. So like I always like to ask people sort of on their journey in terms of like what they studied and what they picked up along the way. So you kind of answered some of that, but because we work with like a lot of young people and young people who are interested in perhaps going into the industry in some form, and maybe have an idea of like what sort of qualifications and things you need. And I'm always mindful to get a sense of like, obviously you didn't study esports at university or school or whatever it might be. Like, what did you study that's helped you for where you are now versus what you picked up along the way? Like, how would you break that down?
Well, I mean, I studied law and German before I went to the Premier League. I think languages are great because you're dealing with people all over the world, so languages are always hugely beneficial. Legal training, even if you're not a solicitor, will help you for the rest of your life. It helps you in correspondence. It helps you analyse. I mean, even today, I look at contracts. I can do my own contracts for the business because of my training, even though I'm not practicing. What for me, the most important lesson I can give someone is just try and get work experience. Just knock on as many doors as you can to get work experience. You can learn on the job from the right people generally, but what people want to see in your CV is that you've shown an interest already in the industry. So when I wanted to do sports law, I went round to all the media sports law firms and asked for work experience. And then when it came to getting a training contract, I could show actually, look, I'm not coming at this out of the blue. I've got some work experience in these various places in this industry. And now when people approach me and they're applying for jobs, it's one of the first things I do. I look at, are they fresh out? I mean, if they're fresh out of school, they're fresh out of college. I'm not necessarily saying they have to have a degree. There's a lot of debate around this at the moment, whether you need a degree to work in esports, and there's lots of universities doing them. I think having a degree is helpful, but there's a lot of cons to going to university, particularly from a cost perspective. It's not always feasible for everybody. But the lesson in life can be learned on the job, but you need to get that experience. So I've, from an esports experience, I've learned a lot about esports over the last couple of years just by educating myself and talking to people. I'm working in it. I didn't come into esports as an esports professional, so to speak. I came in more as a business guy. You know, I can do the deals, I can open up the network, I can talk to people, and then I surround myself with people that know esports. And then I pick up from them, and I pick up from just educating myself as I go along. Yeah,
no, I totally understand that, because even on my own journey, I studied engineering, so I've got an engineering degree, and now sort of make comics and run a gaming event. But like you touched on, it's the idea that even though you're not, say, formally trained in the thing you're doing, you can still pick up experiences and skills from other areas that can actually benefit you. So in your case, you mentioned a contract, so yeah, definitely something to keep in mind for people. So if we fast forward to 2019, and you have founded your own esports organization, London United. So what was the specific motivation behind going ahead and founding your own organization, and why did you go the route of a social enterprise?
So the reason I decided to take a risk and start my own business was because I felt there was opportunity there, and the opportunities in the market from a career perspective didn't interest me that much. When you've been at the Premier League, when you've worked in Formula One, you've had these great jobs, you've got to be excited to go work in other places, and there wasn't that much out there that excited me, in all honesty. And, secondly, recognise what we felt was a gap in the market. A city-based, community-based, content-focused organisation that could enable gamers to take a path to pro. You could say some of that's unique, some of it's not unique, because I could say to you, yes, there are other paths to pro, and you could tell me, yes, there are other paths to pro. We would agree on that. But the social angle, I think, is particularly unique. Uniting esports with social responsibility, using London United as a platform to address social issues, at the same time as enabling gamers with this opportunity, accessibility to develop their careers, because the stigma attached to gaming isn't there anymore.
Oh, yeah.
You can see all the gamers have taken this career path. But for me, it's really important that people we engage with understand the importance of health and nutrition and looking after the bodies as gamers, and not just sitting in their asses 23 hours a day practicing, because that won't do them any good from a mental health perspective or a physical perspective. So it's our USP. Social responsibility in gaming and esports. It's the USP of London United, essentially. That's why we decided to go ahead and align social issues with esports.
Okay.
Under the back of London United.
Yeah, no, that sounds really good. And from a practical perspective, like, what do you do? So it's about sort of training people to potentially go sort of pro in esports. Are you holding events? So what's your, not quite day to day, but like what do you do as an organization, your main thing?
Well, I think we've done a mix of physical and online events. There's a couple of reasons we do physical events, because I think there's a nice angle there for brands from an experiential, but more importantly for the gaming community. United equals community. You hold a physical event, you can bring people together. There's something nice about that.
Yeah.
Of course, you can create content both physical or online. Online, you've got no boundaries geographically. Physical is a bit more different. But how do we do it? So in Lewisham last year, Lewisham Shopping Centre, we held hashtag Grime Against Knives. We worked with the police, local authority, with Grime Artists P Money to address knife crime in Lewisham. We addressed participation in sport and gaming with a charity called Street League, where their participants participated not just in our FIFA tryouts at Red Bull Gaming Sphere, but we had them involved in a five-a-side physical tournament before the tryouts. And Twitch actually asked us to film the five-a-side tournament, funnily enough. During COVID, we pivoted to online. We addressed loneliness and male suicide prevention with a FIFA event. We did wellness and nutrition around the League of Legends team. And as you know, the 17th September is United Against Racism, to celebrate diversity in gaming and work with a variety of influencers. Now, each element has the platform for the gamers to get involved. And generally what we have done is we've found the best talent and created teams that we've signed the players and put them into competitions to represent London United. So we've had a League of Legends team playing the UKEL. The split has just finished. During the lockdown, we ran the FIFA tournament, and actually our gamer Dennis came through from 79 others and played against Tex from Fnatic, best FIFA gamer in the world, potentially, depends which side you're coming from. But ultimately, the opportunity this guy Dennis had was he got trained like a gamer for a week by G Science, and then played in this competition against Tex, in which LAFC and Ninjas in Pajamas and a whole lot of others were competing. And that was an opportunity he wouldn't normally have had.
That's really cool. I like how you kind of blend in the elements of like physical events and sort of physical preparation with the esports. And we're back with Ollie, and we're going to be talking more about London United, esports, and some of the work that they're doing in that area. So, Ollie, one of the things that I realized as we were talking that is worth just stopping and mentioning is, so London United is a social enterprise. Can you just give a brief outline of what it means to be a social enterprise for people who might not know?
Yeah, I think the word social enterprise are misleading. We're an esports organization that addresses social issues. I think social enterprise, sometimes people might think we're not for profit, but we're actually a limited company that is building out community and addressing societal issues. We may actually in future have a not-for-profit arm of the business, so that when we go around boroughs of London, which is one of our aims, to be able to put on events in Canning Town and Hackney, there's a potential to take in grants, take in funding, and then actually have a mandate that will only be spent on those sorts of events. It won't go into our salaries, as an example, but obviously we have to be able to pay salaries and we have overheads, so we have to try and generate revenue somehow. But if you want to continue with that social enterprise angle, essentially it's about that all these issues are out there in the world. We know the Gen Z, the gaming demographic, care about them, and we know that they will engage with brands that care about the issues as well. So how can we marry them up? And you know as well yourself that it's quite hard to engage this demographic. So we have said, right, well, esports, yeah, for gaming and esports, they're huge. They've grown massively throughout lockdown. And you've seen Black Lives Matters, you've seen climate change, you've seen Extinction Rebellion, you see all these issues that are being addressed, and we feel they're very important. I'm not a social impact entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur that cares about social impact, and there is a slight difference there. And it's a case of, right, my business, I feel it's really important to have some sort of legacy. I saw how the Premier League did it. I saw how Formula One didn't do it. And it's for that reason that we're addressing these issues. Knife crime in Lewisham, you think, what's a young esports organisation doing addressing knife crime in Lewisham? Having meetings with the police and local authority about messaging and taking a unit in a shopping centre and spending all this money on a proof of concept. But that's what we are as an organisation. It cannot be tokenism. It has got to be something that you do properly, because everyone will see through you otherwise. And I'm sure you appreciate that as much as I do, that you've got to do things properly. You've got to act on the words. And it's for that reason that we've engaged a number of brands throughout this journey and various influencers and ambassadors.
No, I totally understand. I think I agree about doing things properly. And I think what that means is then you tend to then ask yourself like sort of tough questions about what you're doing and how you kind of continue doing it, not just doing like a one-off thing. And if you're, trying to change a certain issue, like what does it mean to engage with people who are sort of going through those issues? So I completely get that. So going back to sort of that mix of your background and esports, like we had a panel recently about well-being in video games, and one of the aspects we touched on is physical well-being. So, you mentioned early on that the stereotype of sort of gamers just sitting around for like the day playing games, and not doing much else. But I noticed that in what you do, there is an aspect of sort of physical fitness. I guess that's something you've brought on from your time in the Premier League, but what have you seen in terms of the combination of physical fitness and esports that has changed how you operate as an organization?
I think in my head, I always believed that the ethos of the business had to be aligned with societal benefits, and health and nutrition are fundamental to that. And if you look at the top level of esports, those elements are already being addressed by Fnatic and Ninjas in Pyjamas and Excel and others. But is it filtering down to the grassroots? Sort of rhetoric question. I think the answer is not really. And therefore I felt it was quite important to address it bottom up. And actually the gamers that we have engaged with have all been hugely responsive. In fact, so much so that our League of Legends team that competed in the UKL were supported by a nutrition partner called Biosynergy. And what they do is they have this sort of iPad, it's called a FitPad, something like that, a live FitPad. And it's got Fit in 5 workouts built in. And we got our gaming team to recreate one of the workouts, but they did it in fancy dress for a bit of fun. And we socialized it. And it went down very well. And that's the sort of thing we're doing. We're not taking ourselves too seriously. Although one of our gamers, this is an exclusive, one of our gamers is about to embark on a campaign with a celebrity fitness trainer on a journey to get into better shape.
Okay, cool.
So everyone's embraced it quite well, but for me it's quite important that whether it came from the Premier League or wherever I've been, I'm not so sure. I think I myself like to try and exercise regularly. Diet maybe isn't as good as it could be, but I just don't want to have that, when I'm talking to stakeholders, particularly from my previous work relationships, I don't want them to have that stereotype of these gamers just sit there playing with a controller on the PC for 20 hours a day, 22 hours a day.
Yeah, no, I get it. And it is really a strong stereotype that kind of does hold, despite, sort of evidence to the contrary. But so we talked a bit about the social kind of side in terms of like the esports side. So I'm very interested, like, I was going to say, what is esports? Not what is this? What counts as esports? Because I mentioned FIFA earlier, and you said that might not be considered an esport. So what's the line?
But I didn't say an esport. I think I said a true esport.
A true esport. That is, let me not misquote you. So what then defines a true esport?
I think, look, simplistically, esports is competitive gaming. So I'm a big lover of FIFA. I have a 6-year-old son. All he wants to do is play FIFA. For me, it's very important to give him that time, but regulate it and be responsible. So I love FIFA. But what I was saying is, if you look at the numbers attached to Dota and Counter-Strike and League of Legends and Fortnite, the only time that the viewing numbers for FIFA really are in the top 10, for example, top 10 most watched titles on Twitch, is around the FIFA eWorld Cup, which I think I remember doing a presentation at Loughborough University at the end of last year, and I had the slide, and it was in the July of 2019 that I think the average numbers were around 1 million, and all the other esports in the top 6 were in double digits, 10, 11, 12 million. So that's what I mean by it. FIFA's got a great community. I follow a lot of people who play FIFA online. The influencers got a lot of respect for them as well, and I really like it, and I like the angle of being able to link it with the participation in sport with gaming. But I was just saying, contrasting to the Fortnites and others. But you actually, it's quite interesting. I'm going to digress here. If you look at what Fortnite's become, it's not just a traditional game anymore, is it?
No.
That's utilised in esports. It's become a media platform. They're integrating concerts in there, etc. And FIFA, you can't ever envisage doing that quite yet, can you?
Yeah, no, Fortnite's become its own platform in a sense for like adding other experiences outside of esports, which is like amazing to see. So, all right, what about something like...
The other thing I'd say is with FIFA is that 15-minute game generally isn't that exciting as watching... I will go back to what I did in 2018, going to Wembley and seeing Counter-Strike. You put them side by side, which one is going to be more enthralling for you?
Yeah. No, I totally get that. So what do you think about something like Fall Guys? Because that's come on recently and that's not a true esport, I'd say, but it is sort of taking over. And what I found interesting about it is it's got a completely different look and feel, and in a way has a potential to attract a different audience. So from my perspective, I kind of see esports and what we're doing with like GamePad and GamePad Online is trying to, it's not necessarily, say, if we say like true esports, but it's that kind of more approachable platform to bring more people in. So how do you see Fall Guys, something like that, fitting into that formula?
Well, I think if you go back a step, if you look at what the publishers use esports for, a lot of them only use esports as a publicity tool. What does a publisher want to do? They just want to sell games, don't they?
Yeah.
But look at Valorant when it came out, the huge momentum it picked up immediately, and then it created its own esports ecosystem, which was sort of backed by Riot with some guidelines, but they didn't even do it themselves, and that was just when it was in beta. Fall Guys, I haven't played it, I've seen it, I've seen Lando Norris, the F1 McLaren driver, who is really active on Twitch gaming, stream it, and I just think it's great. Like anything that can build community, particularly bring in male and females. We looked at doing a project in schools, and one of the bits of feedback we got was that FIFA wasn't encompassing enough for women. So any game that can really ensure there's no barrier between male and female for me is great as well. Rocket League, like the Rocket League ecosystem, we're doing something with Rocket League in due course. Fall Guys, haven't played it, watched it, think it's great. And hopefully there's games like that will continue to unite and, ensure there's no toxicity around as well. That's an interesting topic.
Yeah.
Can be addressed.
Yeah, no, I think the more we can sort of make it more inclusive, it just benefits sort of the community and even like the industry at large. So my sort of last question is again on the esports line of thinking is, like you mentioned again, that with COVID, it's kind of resulted in a boost in the amount of people sort of participating in esports and maybe brought more visibility to it. Like as we move forward, where do you see esports going? Because as big as it is, and certainly from like a potential revenue perspective, and as you're doing with making sort of or tackling social issues, it's not necessarily mainstream, say, and is that something you feel needs to change? Is that something you feel will change? Where do you see esports going in the future?
Who sings the song "The Only Way Is Up"?
Oh yeah, okay, I get that. Yeah, so
just the only way is up. Anyway, that's what I think about esports. But I think in this country, it's still relatively nascent compared to the US and Asia. And, I've seen that when I've been out in the hunt for investment, particularly a lot of the investors don't understand esports. But I think as technology has developed, esports is, of course, developed at the same time, probably fast now, faster during COVID than probably we anticipated. And I think it's here to stay. I asked in a recent interview if I think we're in a bubble. I was with a guy from Red Bull Gaming in the US, and we were discussing this, and neither of us thought we're in a bubble. We think it's here to stay. I think it's only going to go one way. The interesting thing, which I was also asked, was do you think that a lot of gamers will go back to watching the traditional sports now? And I said, well, actually, look what the traditional sports are doing. They're bringing their content onto Twitch because they know that they can't get their fans back. So I think we're in a good place, good ecosystem to be in.
Okay, cool. And yeah, just to wrap up, what projects are you working on? And yeah, where can we find more about London United?
Yeah, no, thanks. So there's two things we're doing. One is we're addressing societal issues, and the other is around helping gamers develop their careers and looking at how to acquire rosters and which titles to compete in. So we're looking at FIFA when the new game comes out. I've said everything we just did previously. Rocket League, we're in League of Legends. We've done the United Against Racism event, which was to address, obviously, racism and celebrate the diversity in gaming with influencers ranging from a Paralympian to a triple jumper to an associate of the Sidemen, YouTuber Joel JMX Morris, FIFA YouTuber. And we are looking at other issues in respect of education and wellness and safeguarding. We are on Twitter at LDN UTD, so anyone that wants to get in touch can contact me that way, or at Insta LDN_UTD. We're always looking for people that might be interested in work experience or something more permanent, or even trying out for the team, or any content ideas. We're always open to discussion. So feel like we're approachable, please.
Cool. All right. Well, no, that all sounds great. And we're going to put those links in the description for this interview so people can sort of chase you down and find out more about the work you do and how to get involved. So yeah, that's the end of our interview. Ollie, thank you so much for joining me and just giving us that insight from your experience in different, like completely different roles in some ways, but kind of that have married up with the work that you do now.
Thank you, and good luck for the rest of the event.
Thanks. And yeah, so you can check out this interview and other interviews we're doing as part of the Autumn GamePad Online. As always, you can join our Discord to continue the conversation and just keep an eye out on future GamePad events and panels and interviews that we'll be doing in due time. I should also mention that we do have a podcast which you can listen to, where we talk about stories across pop culture and video game discussions, kind of like what we've been doing right now. So that is hosted by myself and Tazzy. And yeah, you can find it out at mayamada.com/story. Our email address is Let me try that again. Our email address is gamepad@mayamada.com. So you can always send your feedback there. And until next time, we will see you again. Take care.